All right, so let's go back to the text then. So there's this unflinching clarity of purpose. So let's just be clear on that before we move on. So in anything that you're engaged in as a jiva, because you're now looking at it from that perspective, there can be no failure. All those judgments, anytime the mind comes up and goes, oh, I'm happy because of this, or I'm sad because of this, or this was a success, or this was a failure, on one level of our being, yes, we can still make that kind of discrimination as a person navigating. But as a spiritual seeker, as a mumukshu, someone who has, Purushartha Nishchaya, knows what you want moksha, I want moksha, then you can drop all those judgments about success and failure. Because no matter what comes up, it's just everything's a perfect circumstance in which to recognize your true nature. And when you can recognize your true nature, despite what the ego is telling you about this is good or bad or advantageous or disadvantageous, how great is that? Because then that's freedom, right? Because then you're not bound to having things this way or that way. From one perspective, the jiva still thinks, oh, this sucks. But from another perspective, there's this, oh, I'm so free. I'm free. It can be this way. And it's okay. And that's that recognition. And at first, yes, like we say, again, it takes effort. It's hard work. It's not necessarily enjoyable. It's not going to click day one. But you got to just keep doing that over and over and over, and you'll see. Don't take my word for it. Practice it in your life and apply the knowledge and see what happens. Okay, 24. With all thought-motivated desires renounced and the senses restrained by the mind, hold the mind on the self with great perseverance and think of nothing else. Gain control of the mind by bringing it back to the self over and over again. Okay, thought-motivated desires. Does that mean we don't ever do anything? We never think? No, we use our discrimination. Doesn't mean what we think it means on the practical level. It just means like ego-driven desires. Thinking again that these are going to enhance me or diminish me. They're layered with all kinds of vasana-based judgments and evaluations. Okay? It's not taking into account the fact of the matter, but is layering upon the fact of the matter all this interpretation of that then leads us to believe it's good or bad or right or wrong or, etc. Okay? So, having renounced those, now it doesn't mean not engaging in them, but again, it's a cognitive shift. And it will probably have some ramification where you will chase fewer things. So you do see that people, as they progress along the path, or many people who progress along the path, so to speak, a lot of their desires drop away. Their lives become more simple. They're engaged in fewer activities. Again, that's not necessarily, there's some use for simplifying your life and withdrawing from some activities, but you can use that as a tool, but you don't want to be too severe about it because then it's just me doing that. But those things will also be a fruit. They'll naturally drop away as you understand more because you'll just need less. Some things you're still going to desire, some things you're still going to need, but again, it won't be binding. So the senses are restrained by the mind. Okay? Again, we're not just denying our senses. We're not saying we don't have those inclinations. It's not necessary that desires go away in that sense. They can arise. And we're not just repressing them totally. Because if we just, certainly if we deny and also if we just repress them, that's a matter of willpower. And so, yes, that can be employed to a moderate degree, as I've mentioned, but also it's kind of just setting a trap that's waiting to, spring as soon as the willpower lets down. Okay? So I'm not going to eat sugar, I'm not going to eat sugar, I'm not going to eat sugar, and then one day, I can't, I get stressed or whatever, the vasana kicks in too much, this old habitual pattern. When I get upset, I stuff a candy bar in my mouth. Then all of a sudden, boom, I do that, and then the floodgates are open. Boom. There's a chink in the dam, and the whole damn thing just explodes, and suddenly, you got a shopping bag full of chocolate bars as you're making your way home from Nilgiris or whatever. I do like sugar myself. As I'm carting home my 3-pound brick of apple pie from German bakery last night.
You seem to sit intelligently.
Yeah, right. Gotta have fruit for breakfast. Right? Anyway. Okay. Okay, so again, it mentions great perseverance, right? Takes effort. And perseverance suggests not just a one-time effort, over and over and over again. Okay? So keep applying it. Think of nothing else. We've covered that. It doesn't mean that's the only thought. Sometimes you are focused, You repeat mantras or whatever. But it's continually dwelling on the teachings. It's great to watch the videos, read the scriptures, listen to the talks, read the other books, just apply it, think about it. All of that. But even when you're moving in, the world and you have to take care of your responsibilities, you have to be applying your thoughts to that, it's not far away. It's always there informing you. All right, gain control of the mind by bringing it back to the self over and over again. Here it says, right, straight from, the horse's mouth. Krishna is saying, we're not expecting you to be just established. Bring it back over and over and over again. And now, lest we forget, we've sort of moved away from the idea of sitting meditation, but that was the topic that he began with. Remember, he gave the instructions about establishing a seat and all of that. So this is applicable to, or most directed toward, this is how we sit for meditation. So even when you're sitting for meditation, the mind's going to wander, as you well know, I'm sure. And then you keep bringing it back. That is meditation. Samadhi is when the mind doesn't wander, and we experience that from time to time. But meditation is retraining the mind to just keep coming back.
So what does it mean in this respect to bring the mind back to the self not being an object and the mind only able to focus on object?
Well, through contemplating the teachings, you start to have this understanding that I'm beyond any of the objects. So even when the objects may be arising, like I've used the metaphor before. We have to put it in kind of figurative terms, but it might work for you to have this sense of stepping back from it, or your awareness broadens and you see that you're like this vast expanse, the sky that these clouds are floating in, or you're the room in which the furniture is, or you're the light in which all these objects are illumined. Different figurative things might work for that. Now, of course, those are not the self, those are reflections, but that's as close as the mind is ever going to get. So that's the tool we use in meditation. So the mind has never gone away, and yet, but that's not very workable because it sure seems to have gone away. So if we want to just speak from the highest perspective, but that doesn't really help the jiva make much progress. So from the jiva's perspective, bringing the mind back is to focus on this understanding that may be reflected in even kind of an image of sort of, limitlessness, if that makes sense. It's or a sense of like edgelessness, unmodified awareness. But again, that's why it's a cognitive thing. It's more of an understanding. But you just bring yourself back to that. So you're looking in the mirror of that, or seeing the reflection of unmodified awareness. So that's what it means to bring the mind back.
That's the anakarta of Vritti that you mentioned before?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like mantra would be like a tool to remember the self. Like
Yeah,
or concentrating on I am or things like that. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, we'll talk, we're going to get to meditation and do a meditation, and we'll talk about how to employ mantra, what its true purpose is.
Is it remaining as the witnessing awareness or attempting to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so indeed, the most exalted happiness arises in the meditator who becomes the self through self-knowledge. All impurities are reduced to ash in the fire of self-knowledge, and life is seen to be free of defects. If you remain free from conflicts produced by improper contact with the world and constantly reconnect the mind with the self until you realize the non-separation of the mind and the self, unconditioned happiness arises. Holy smokes, there's a lot in that one. Okay. Again, now realize we're not talking about experiential happiness. This happiness, the most exalted happiness, is just this. It could be reflected as experiential happiness in the mind. That it may arise, or you may have just this great sense of I'm just happy. But that's not really the essence of it. The essence of it is rock solid conviction of your well-being, despite anything that comes your way. So it arises in the meditator who becomes the self through self-knowledge. This is about as clear as we can put it in figurative terms. You become the self by knowing you are the self. So there's no actual becoming, but from the jiva's perspective, this cognitive shift feels like some kind of transformation or becoming.
Like a reminder.
Yes. So, you become the self through self-knowledge. All impurities are reduced to ash in the fire of self-knowledge. Again, great metaphor, and this whole fire business is used in different ways. So sometimes fire represents desire, and God, it'll just eat up anything. It's never going to say I'm full. Different self-knowledge is also likened to fire because it just burns away everything. Burns away all the impurities. When you heat up gold and you remove all the impurities. So fire, boil water, right? Neutralizes all the impurities. And so the impurities being reduced to ash, that might be something to explore briefly here. The idea of that metaphor is, it would seem to suggest they're totally obliterated. Okay? But even ash is some residue. So again, let's just bear in mind that by ridding ourselves of impurities, we're not talking about eliminating thoughts or certain desires to some degree. Those may always arise in you. Some of them will go away. Again, we got different degrees of intensity, for the vasanas. But it's okay if they arise. As long as they don't bind you, that's good. And that's what this reduces. The impurities are the binding nature of the vasanas.
Ramana talked about burnt ropes.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So, reduced to the ash in the fire of self-knowledge, and life is seen to be free of defects. Oh, so then I just walk down the street and I see somebody rob a store or mug somebody and I don't do anything, or I think, oh, that's just okay. Person's karma, no biggie. Or don't even think of it in those terms, just it's all good. No, that's not what it means. On the relative scale, we're still going to have dharma and adharma. That's where dharma and adharma apply. But self-knowledge, we see the self, okay? And in this sense, we would interpret life as existence. The self is free of defects. We could actually, from the highest perspective, also understand it in terms of the operation of the apparent reality, the big giant vasana generating mechanism. Okay, but it's a universal order. So there are no defects despite appearances. We're all getting exactly what's coming to us because we planted the seeds. You know, and again, now that doesn't mean that we turn a blind eye to what we perceive as injustice. It's just that we understand where it comes from, but also part of our karmic consequence is the idea that this is an injustice that should be remedied. So then we take action, okay? So it's a subtle understanding. You have to be a mature individual to take this on board. From one perspective, we see nothing's going wrong, and from another perspective, we see we better manage affairs here because a lot of things are, running amok and have potential for further, disarray and whatever. So you got to be able to navigate in both worlds, from both perspectives, tune into both channels. We talked about that yesterday. Okay, so I hear that. Let's just see where we are here. Improper contact with the world. Constantly reconnect the mind. Realize non-separation. Unconditioned happiness. Okay, improper contact. Let's just cover this. This will be the last thing before the break. So, what's improper contact with the world? Well, from the Jiva's perspective, it's adharmic behavior. So you don't want to lie and cheat and steal. Duh. Okay? That's not hard to figure out if you want to be free of stress. Let's say that, much less other things. Because criminals, they're always looking over their back, right? Did you follow the saga of this Mexican drug lord? They finally gotten him. His ego gave him away. Because he was like, they were taking selfies and, I don't know, they got posted on YouTube or something. They figured out, or his son was like, I don't know. So they they figured out where he was and they got it. Okay? Anyway, the point is, obviously, those are, egregious adharmic acts. We want to refrain from those. But other adharmic acts are simply associating with these erroneous notions about ourselves. That's improper contact with the world. Because the world is not just the transactional reality that everyone has access to, but it's the thoughts and emotions that are arising within you as well. So if you make improper contact with those, and take those that are mistaken, which pretty much, a lot of them are, and take those to be truthful or honest or, accurate reflections of your true nature, then that's improper contact with the world. Okay? So, if you remain free from the conflicts that are caused by those things, and then these other things we've talked about, constantly reconnecting, it's not continuously staying connected. Again, as you're practicing, you just keep reminding yourself over and over. It's always informing this understanding of who you are to a greater and greater degree. You're confident in that, and it's informing your actions. You realize the non-separation. This is a better way of putting it than connecting or all that. That's what you do. You realize I was never separate in the first place. I don't have to detach. I have to understand I'm unattached to begin with. Okay, and then unconditioned happiness arises. two ways of understanding this. Certainly, object happiness is conditioned by the object, right? Got to have certain conditions or certain things. But unconditioned happiness, too, isn't even conditioned by being happy, you know, in the experiential sense. So you just know, I am limitless conscious existence. Nothing can enhance me or diminish me. All's well. I can be in whatever dang mood I am in, and I'm still me, because something is aware of that. Something's illuminating that, and that's me.